Welcome to this deep dive. Today we're tackling some real giants, the big four professional services firms.
Deloitte, PwC, EY, KPMG.
Yeah,
Huge names.
exactly. These are companies, they're deeply embedded in the global economy, right? Advising on everything from audit and tax to strategy, technology. They are, frankly, just massive.
And for decades, they've built these empires on, expertise, sheer scale, and a very particular business model. You could almost say they felt, untouchable.
Right, felt untouchable. But the core question we're really unpacking from the source material today is, can even these colossal firms withstand the disruptive force of AI?
Yeah, what do the sources actually say is happening? What's going on the ground?
And what does it mean for the future of professional services as a whole? That's what we want to get into.
It's a really fascinating tension, actually. Our mission here is to sort of navigate the different perspectives you find in these sources.
Because they aren't all saying the same thing.
No, not at all. You'll see some voices predicting pretty significant challenges, maybe even major disruption for the big four.
But then others?
Others argue that their sheer scale, their deep pockets, their existing client relationships, that all positions them not just to survive, but maybe even adapt and actually thrive with AI.
Okay, so definitely not a simple black and white picture then. Let's dive into what the sources are revealing.
So what immediately jumps out is just how AI seems to have the potential to shake up, not just job roles, but the very foundations of these firms.
You mean like their business model, their structure? Exactly. Even how they price their services, it goes deep.
Absolutely. And one perspective we see from Alan Payton, he used to be a partner at PwC, specialized in AI. He's pretty blunt about this potential disruption.
Yeah, blunt how?
He really zeroes in on AI's ability to automate those, highly structured, data-heavy tasks, especially in areas like audit and tax.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Lots of data there. Right. And he's not just talking about minor tweaks either. Payton forecasts a, quote, huge reduction in profits in these core areas.
A huge reduction. Does he give any numbers?
He estimates that maybe up to 50% of roles could be impacted. And get this, within a surprisingly short time frame, like 3 to 5 years.
Wow, 50%. That's significant.
It is. And he even points to AI solutions that apparently already exist, capable of handling, astonishingly, like 90% of certain audit processes.
90%. Okay, wow, that really seems like a direct hit to their traditional leverage model, doesn't it?
Totally. Where junior staff handle a lot of that routine, data-heavy work.
Yeah. And it raises this huge question, right? If a machine can give a client an answer almost instantly, why would they pay those premium rates consultants have historically charged for that kind of analysis?
Exactly. This isn't just about automating tasks. It fundamentally challenges the whole billable hour concept.
So if AI drives down the effective price for certain deliverables,
then these firms, which are built on tracking time, they might be forced to pivot, maybe towards outcomes-based pricing.
Which would be a massive shift for their organizational DNA, a really fundamental change.
And it's not just the automation threat itself that makes them seem vulnerable in some sources. Casey Foss at West Monroe, that's a prominent midsize firm, mentioned she makes a compelling argument.
What's her take?
She argues that because of these underlying structural issues, the big four are actually more exposed than smaller players.
More exposed? Why? Because they're bigger.
Kind of, yeah. She highlights the sheer difficulty of turning such a massive ship.
Yeah.
Trying to quickly adapt strategy, upskill hundreds of thousands of employees globally, rethink how you deliver services at that scale.
Right. It's just inherently slower, more complex.
She calls it definitely harder for a big four firm compared to, say, a more agile mid-sized competitor.
Okay, that makes sense. Agility is key here.
This also connects to another critical point the sources explore: offshoring.
Ah, right. The Big Four built huge revenue streams partly on that labor arbitrage, didn't they? Using those junior-heavy pyramids and leveraging lower costs in places like India or elsewhere for certain tasks.
Exactly. So if AI can perform a lot of that work more efficiently, maybe even better, and potentially without geographic limits,
then that reliance on those huge offshore delivery centers could shrink significantly.
Payton, the ex-PwC partner, states it quite pointedly. He says, if your business model is basically built on the sheer number of people you can throw at a problem,
then you're really vulnerable to AI disruption.
Yeah, I can see that logic.
And we've already seen some ripples, haven't we? The sources mention, amidst market shifts and changing needs, instances of layoffs, slower hiring.
Like PwC trimming about 2% of its U.S. audit and tax workforce last year.
Yeah. Makes you wonder, doesn't it, about the future talent pipeline? If AI handles more of the junior level work, how do people gain that foundational experience they need to eventually become partners?
That's a really crucial point.
Yeah.
The whole traditional career path is kind of thrown into question. But, like you said earlier, the sources also present a very different view.
Right. That AI isn't necessarily making consultants obsolete, but it is changing their role, shifting what they do.
And this is where it gets really interesting, I think. Casey Foss, the one from West Monroe, despite pointing out the Big Four vulnerabilities.
She also firmly believes AI will never replace the human consultant.
So what's the human role then, according to her?
Well, she argues AI frees up consultants from the grunt work, but it doesn't eliminate the need for their judgment. Businesses still need someone who can understand complex problems holistically,
Apply that nuanced expertise.
Exactly. And maybe most intriguingly, leverage what she calls that expertise of the gut feel, something AI, at least currently, really lacks.
The gut feel. That's interesting. And this perspective ties directly into another major theme from the sources, right?
Which is?
That AI is actually proving to be a significant advantage for those mid-market consulting firms.
Ah, yes. This is a fascinating counterpoint to the whole Big Four disruption narrative.
You have people like Alibek Dosirov. He's a former McKinsey consultant, now runs a startup focused on AI for smaller firms.
And what does he say?
He calls AI a necessary enabler for these smaller firms to, quote, proliferate and prosper.
A necessary enabler. How so? How does it help them?
Well, he explains that automation effectively levels the playing field. Smaller firms used to be at a disadvantage because they didn't have, massive teams or the super sophisticated internal tech the Big Four have.
Okay. But AI changes that.
It seems to empower their existing smaller teams to be incredibly productive. It diminishes those traditional scale disadvantages.
Dostirov gives a great example, doesn't he? His clients can now effectively respond to maybe 10 or 12 project inquiries.
Whereas before, they might have only had the capacity for 2 or 3. Huge difference.
Yeah. And Casey Foss at West Monroe confirms this impact too. She cites higher win rates for them, says their pipeline is bigger than it's ever been.
And here's a surprising twist the sources uncover. Mid-market firms like West Monroe, they're apparently starting to attract talent, specifically leadership candidates, from the Big Four.
That's right. According to Foss, these experienced Big Four people are apparently excited about how boutique firms can use this technology faster and more iteratively.
To serve clients differently.
Yeah.
It suggests AI isn't just a tool. It might actually be shifting where the really experienced talent sees the most dynamic opportunities.
Where they can apply these cutting-edge capabilities more quickly, perhaps.
So, okay, on one hand, you've got AI potentially creating these major headwinds for the Big Four's established structure, their pricing.
While at the same time, it seems to be turbocharging their smaller, maybe more agile competitors.
But crucially, the sources are far from writing off the giants entirely.
No, absolutely not. And this brings us squarely to the counter-argument. The belief within the Big Four and among some observers that their scale and resources actually make adaptation inevitable.
Maybe even positioning them to lead the AI transformation.
That's the argument. And they've certainly put their money where their mouth is.
Like KPMG, for instance. They announced a plan to invest. What was it? A staggering $2 billion over 5 years.
$2 billion, yeah. With projections that this investment could generate over $12 billion in revenue in that same time frame.
I mean, that's an investment scale that smaller firms
Yeah.
They simply can't match that.
No way. And innovation leaders at KPMG and EY, quoted in the sources, they push back hard on this idea that their scale is purely a hindrance.
They see it as an advantage.
Exactly. They argue it's precisely their scale and the breadth of their services that are the advantage. They believe they're uniquely positioned to develop and deliver robust,
enterprise-grade AI solutions. The kind large corporations need.
Right, and to manage the inherent risks, the ethics, the security, and integrate this stuff across complex global operations.
Cliff Justice in KPMG is quoted saying something like, "Anyone predicting AI will dismantle the Big Four's dominance is underestimating their structural advantages, strategic positioning, and ability to adapt at scale."
It's a strong assertion, basically saying, we've navigated big changes before, we can do it again.
And Raj Sharma at EY echoes this. He views their vast organization as the perfect test bed for innovation.
He points to over a century of deep sector knowledge, massive amounts of high-quality data they possess, and the collective intelligence of hundreds of thousands of professionals.
All unique strengths that AI can potentially amplify, not just replace.
Exactly. And they emphasize that this deep human expertise actually becomes even more critical with AI.
Why that?
Because AI introduces all these complex new challenges, right? Around ethics, security, regulatory compliance. Businesses need partners who can navigate those tricky waters, not just deploy the tech.
That makes sense. You need the human oversight, the judgment.
Umang Pa, who's PwC's CTO, conveys a lot of confidence. He states his firm is more than ready for this moment of reinvention.
He notes they've had an AI practice for a decade already, and they're working hard to embed their sector expertise directly into their AI tools.
As Pa puts it, every industrial revolution has reshaped professional services, and AI is no exception.
It's a powerful argument, basically saying the Big Four have faced fundamental shifts before and successfully evolved because they're so central to the economy and they have the capacity to invest and adapt.
So yeah, the sources really paint this picture of genuine tension. On one side, you have the clear potential for AI to fundamentally disrupt traditional structures and empower these nimble competitors.
And on the other,
the Big Four's massive investment, their inherent scale advantages, that deep well of expertise, and their stated confidence in their ability to adapt, integrate, and ultimately lead.
It's definitely complex, dynamic, and clearly still unfolding right now.
Absolutely. And it leaves us and you listening with some pretty significant questions to think about.
So maybe the final thought for you, reflecting on this deep dive, is this. If AI truly has the potential to automate these core data-heavy tasks
and challenge the fundamental pricing, the organizational structures of massive established firms like the Big Four,
what does that imply about the future role, the future value of human expertise in any industry that deals with complex information?
Yeah, how does that crucial human element, the gut feel we talked about, the holistic understanding, the ability to navigate ambiguity and ethics, how does that remain relevant alongside these increasingly capable AI tools?
How does the unique human contribution evolve?
Yeah.
Does it complement AI rather than just compete with it?
It's definitely a question worth sitting with, I think, as AI continues its transformative path through pretty much the entire professional world.